Hello guys, I am back from another video on today's deku was a mercenary. So, this is a brand new series that I made, and this story is going to be all about Izuku dealing with his mercenary life, and also juggling his normal life as a regular old student, or at least a fake student. So, if you don't know, a mercenary is basically a person who gets information and also assassinates people so he can get paid with money. So he's basically like a hired assassin or info gatherer and maybe other things. So he's gonna be dealing with his mercenary life, but also tackling his regular life as a student at UA, or at least a fake student, because he's actually being paid to stay there to protect a certain person. So, with all that said, let's begin. So, we start off at the perspective of Asashi, as Izuku was given birth. Or, should I say born? Actually, yeah, born. So, when Izuku was born, Asashi and Inko were pretty happy, until they realized that they're currently doing something more important, and that is that they had to sell off their baby, Izuku. The reason why is because the loan sharks are pretty mad that they didn't get paid or get in their money, so they decide to have the baby instead. So they get the baby as Inko and Asashi were devastated. So they basically left the city as the loan sharks don't really know what to do with Izuku, so they told their boss, which was a woman. This woman decided to take care of Izuku for a few years, and told Izuku that he's going to be actually going to the Middle East, where he's going to be training with the first assassination group ever in history. If you don't know, there's actually an assassination group, or a group of assassins, in the Middle East that were basically the origin of the assassin. And those are known as the Asan-i Saba in the Middle East of... Wait for a second. Sorry, but I can't pronounce it, so let's just say in Israel. Yeah, Israel. So, Izuku was brought to the Middle East, where he was trained and learned how to use powers that are unlike a quirk. This power, which allows him to summon out blades. These blades are basically have you seen Hassan from Fate Grand Order? The regular Hassans, not the first Hassan, the regular Hassans, like Hassan Serenity, Hassan 1,000 Faces or Personalities, and Hassan Cursed Arm, where they shoot out and throw knives. That's basically what he does. But instead of knives, he shoots out actual large swords. And one of these swords, which is his Zambania, and if you don't know, a Zambania is basically their most powerful move. Izuku's Zambania is called Zambania... Wait for a second. Zambania the Fool. Which makes sense because of the whole, the picture that I decided to pick for it. So, he's basically able to create illusions, similar to Hassan... Wait for a second. Similar to Hassan, Hassan the 1,000 Faces, but instead of them being actual physical things, you can actually touch them, but instead they're more like illusions, regular old illusions. If you touch them, they basically disappear. So after Izuku, after a few years of, training from them, Izuku decides to go back to Japan. When he gets there, everybody was, in the airport, everybody was confused seeing him. He looks like a Japanese person, but he definitely has a little bit more toned skin. As when Izuku goes back to his quote-unquote mother, being the lone shark's leader, Izuku sees her as she says this: "So, Izuku, it's been a long time. You've been grown into a beautiful and strong man." As Izuku just stays quiet. because all of the grueling training was torturous. But Izuku just endured the pain, as she says this. Izuku, are you okay? As Izuku just keeps his mouth shut. As she says this. Come on, just at least talk to me. I mean, I'm technically your mother. As Izuku just says this. Sure, mother. As she says this. Your voice... I meant, wait for a second. Wait. Sorry about that. Your voice seems a bit, chapped. Like, your voice seems to be more deeper. I guess after a while of, living in Israel, I guess it kind of changed you. As Izuku just says this. Yeah, I guess you're right. As she says this. Alright, maybe we should try and have a party. After all, you are going to become the brand new leader of my group, remember? As Izuku just says this. Right. So, Izuku was brought to the, everybody. As everybody celebrated celebrated these, celebration, coming back to Japan. So, when everybody celebrated, Izuku was not really happy all about, the party, basically. Because Izuku doesn't really know how to interact with people. After all, he was training as an assassin, or at least a mercenary. Izuku only knows bloodshed and death. Because after all, the Asans were basically the embodiment of assassination itself. In fact, they're actually the first assassination group. So, wait for a second again. I'm really sorry. So, after a while of celebrating about Izuku coming back to Japan, Izuku decides to get some rest. Because after the trip, it was pretty tiring, the whole, transferring here and all of the paperwork. Izuku decides to get some sleep. Izuku mostly sleeps in beds, but when he gets there to his bedroom, he was sleeping on the floor, which was pretty weird to him and kind of like a foreign concept. So, Izuku sleeps on the floor and basically falls asleep. The next day comes as Izuku was eating with chopsticks. Izuku doesn't really know how to use chopsticks because Izuku, back when he was in Israel, learning how to become a mercenary, he mostly used spoon and forks, and using chopsticks was not his strong suit. So Izuku struggled how to use them, as his foster mother says this. So, Izuku, do you seriously don't know how to use chopsticks? As Izuku just says this. It's been a long time, so I've been using just spoon and forks. So, using the... God dang it, it doesn't work. As she says this. Here, as Izuku was given spoons and forks. As Izuku just says this. Thank you, mother. As she says this. No problem. And also, by the way, Izuku. As Izuku just says this. What is it, mother? As she says this. So, what about your quirk? I never really heard about your quirk all that much. So, what is it? As Izuku just says this. My quirk is just called Blades. It just allows me to create blades upon my body. Basically similar to that girl. I think her name was Momoya Yorozu. As she says this. Really? As Izuku just says this. Yeah. I can basically create blades from my skin. But it sometimes hurts if I use them incorrectly. And that blade over there. As she says this. Oh yeah, that massive one. The one that looks like, wait a minute. The scabbard, it reminds me of a clown. As Izuku just says this. Yes. That's what they call a Zambanaya. As she says this. What? As Izuku explains, my Zombania is called Zombania the Fool. When I use this, well, ability, it allows me to cut through the enemy like nothing more than butter. It basically turns me into a killing machine. So, I would rather you don't touch it, mother. As she says this. Alright. So, after she washed the dishes, Izuku decides to go outside because it's been a long time since he actually had fun. Looked around and not, training and also getting bruises from all of the fighting that he has to do. So, Izuku goes and decides to go outside and decides to look around the entire city, even though some of his, bodyguards, quote unquote, are just following him. These bodyguards are the same people that literally just kidnapped him. Not really kidnapped like Izuku. It's more like Izuku was, surprise adopted. The reason why is because they're kind of worried if policemen or anything like that decides to, try and capture Izuku and also bring him to his real parents, he would be pissed. And it's not helping that he was trained by the first, order of assassins. So, they basically start following Izuku as Izuku goes into a little shop, as everybody was looking at him, mostly because of his foreign appearance. Let's wait for a second again. So, while Izuku was looking around, Izuku bumps into a person. This person had long black hair that's tied into a bun. As Izuku looks over as he says this, sorry, I'm really sorry. As she says this, oh, don't worry. As Izuku looks over and sees that this girl also had dark, completely dark eyes. As she says this, I'm really sorry. Call me Yayorozu, Momo Yayorozu. As Izuku just says this, Momo Yayorozu. Nice to meet you then. As two bodyguards appeared as they say this, Miss Yayorozu, are you okay? As she says this, don't worry, I'm okay. This gentleman helped me. As the guards say this, so, are you a friend of Miss Yayorozu? As Izuku just says this, no, we just recently met. As they looked over and just think of Izuku, as they say this, alright, Miss Yayorozu, you should start leaving. As all of them, mostly the guards and, the girl named Momo Yayorozu start leaving. So, Izuku thought it was weird as Izuku decides to buy a keychain. Because Izuku Izuku thought it was a good looking thing to get. So, Izuku buys it as he starts leaving. When he starts leaving, Izuku sees a fight. A fight between a hero and a villain. This villain was the same villain that was fighting, what's her name? Mount Lady in the first episode of the anime. While they were fighting, Izuku gets, caught in the crossfire as the villain grabs Izuku. Well, Izuku, when he was grabbed, the villain said this. Take this, Mount Lady. If you dare try to cross my line, well, let's just say this boy is about to be cut into pieces. As he starts creating blades from his arms. As Izuku just says this. Do you seriously think that you can actually beat me? Do you seriously think that you could ever touch me? As when the villain heard that, he says this. What you gonna do, small frat? As his arm is cut into pieces with Izuku's blades. As when everybody saw that, they were terrified. Izuku was covered in blood. as Izuku smiled, as Izuku just winked at him, as Izuku just says this. Now blood is covered all over me. Oh well. Hey, miss, are you a hero or something? You can just beat him down or whatever. So, Izuku throws down his swords that were created from his body, as Izuku gets a migraine from after using them, or creating them. So, Izuku starts leaving and goes back home. When he gets back home, his foster mother was completely, well, horrified seeing Izuku covered in blood. As Izuku explains what happened, as she says this, "Are you okay? Are you, like, are you in pain or anything?" As Izuku just says this, "No, mother, I am not in pain. And besides, if I were to be in pain, I wouldn't be a mercenary." As she says this, "Oh, good." By the way, Izuku, I think we have a job for you. Apparently some, well, high-tech company wants your help." As Izuku just says this, "Sure." So, Izuku goes into a room where Izuku meets the person that wants to have him for a job. So, this man had black hair and dark eyes. He's also wearing a pretty fancy suit. Like the most high quality suit that you can think of. Like the most expensive suit that you can think of. So, Izuku sits down as the man says this. "So, you must be Izuku Midoriya." As Izuku just says this. "Yes." "So, what do you want?" As he says this. "Well, I want you to protect my daughter. Apparently some people have been trying to capture her and probably use her for ransom and for money, and maybe even trying to steal her quirk." As Izuku just says this. "Oh yeah, apparently this villain All For One has been trying to, you know, get your daughter's quirk, I believe." As he says this. "How do you know?" As Izuku just says this. "Well, after all, I am a mercenary, so I had to, research a lot. Research about the villain world." As he says this. "Good. So, my daughter, Momo Yayuro," as Izuku just says this. "Wait, Momo Yayurozu?" As he says this. "So you're finally acquainted?" As Izuku just says this. "Yeah, I met her when I was trying to buy something." As he says this. Good. Now, because you already know her, you probably know that she has a special quirk. Creation." As Izuku just says this. "Yeah, creation allows her to create anything from her body, but unfortunately she has to memorize every single composition of the thing. Like for example, how it operates and what elements to use, and also what types of, abilities should it have." As he says this. "Correct. You might be the most smartest person ever here. Maybe smarter than me. Or maybe the same level as Mr. Nezu." As Izuku just says this. "Yes. I'm maybe not as smart as Nezu, but I am smart enough to know that this All For One person is definitely bad news." As he says this. "Correct. And also, what's with your dark skin? It's definitely not normal for a regular old boy. Do you tan or something?" As Izuku just says this. "No. I've been working for, or should I say, been training by the first mercenary group ever. Or should I say the first assassination group. They call themselves the Asan I Sabah." As he says this. "Oh, them. I actually used to hire one of them back in the day, but unfortunately he died during a tragic accident with All For One." As he says this. Very well. I'll help you." As he says this. Let's shake hands to make the deal even more sealed. So, Izuku shakes his hand as he says this. Also, by the way, my daughter is going to be enrolled in UA High, so it's better for you to join that, well, hero school as well. But I think it's better for you to act like a normal student, because after all, if people know that you're a mercenary, it will compromise the whole plan. So, I hope you're ready, Mr. Izuku Midoriya, as Izuku just bows to him, as Izuku just says this. I hope to serve you well, sir. Izuku bows just like in the picture here, as Izuku starts going back to his room. Izuku was tired after a long day of talking with him, as his mother comes into his room, or at least his foster mother, as she says this. So, Izuku, how was your... As Izuku just says this. The talk was perfect. Nothing else, nothing more. And he also said that I'm going to be taking care of his daughter, Momo Yayorozu, as she says this. Wonderful. So, I wanted to ask, are you, like, as Izuku just says this, what is it, mother? As she says this, well, I actually, well, engaged you with another girl. As Izuku just says this, I'm engaged? As she says this, I'm really sorry, but a gang that's been troubling us and also been terrorizing the neighborhood have been butting heads with me for a while, until the actual leader of the group decided for my son, aka you, to marry his daughter. Her name is Jiro, as Izuku just says this. Jiro. Very well. Guess I'll just have to deal with it. As she says this. Wonderful. And also, she's also going to UA High. Apparently, she wants to become a hero. So, maybe if both of you want to become heroes, maybe you can get to know each other better? As Izuku just says this. Sure, mother. So, Izuku tells her to leave now because he's kind of tired. As Izuku falls asleep. So, before you leave, I want all of you to pick in the comments for the ship, because I've been leaving hints in this video on what ship should be. Like, which ship should Izuku be? Like, for example, Jiro or Momo. So, just pick any ship, or I could do a harem. Yeah, you can pick in the comments. So, yeah. So, I hope you liked the video. Comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye!